We're going to move on with our agenda onto the fiscal year 2016 tentative budget introduction. Mr. Giuliano.
Thank you, Dr. Cohen. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we begin the formal conversations with regard to the full budget. And just a few things as a reminder. First off, this is for the budget that begins July 1, 2015. This is a tentative budget. It is being introduced at this time for purposes of discussion. So from tonight through April 30th, the board will have opportunities at each of its meetings to have conversations as to what changes it might want to see and to further explore what opportunities exist within the budget and to learn more details about it. April 30th is the date of the public hearing on the budget. And then the following meeting after that, which is May 7th, I believe it's May 7th, that will be the time when the final budget is adopted. So we have roughly a month and a half within which the budget can be discussed, vetted, and any potential revisions made. One of the things I want to note also is that we are looking at what our potential enrollments are at the elementary level for next year. At this time, the budget does not reflect additional teachers at the elementary level. That is going to be a function of what happens with class sizes as we move forward. So we're going to continue to monitor that, and we'll bring back any recommendations that may be necessary in the coming weeks. So with that preliminary information out there, let's begin. And this is an overview at this time. So we'll start with the revenue side of the budget. What are the components of revenue? Our budget in total will be $143.2 million. That is the tentative budget that will be acted upon this evening. Tax levy, of course, makes up the largest portion of the budget, as has been the case here in East Brunswick. State aid is next at $17.8 million. Budgeted fund balance, we are anticipating to be roughly $4.3 million, and that is a result of funds that we would expect to roll over from the current year. Extraordinary aid relates to those students for whom we expend in excess of approximately $40,000 per student. That was an item that Mrs. Oleszkiewicz discussed during the special education presentation. Fees assessed for club participation, athletic participation, community programs transfer. This is a result of net earnings, net income in the community programs enterprise. We expect to be able to transfer $400,000 from that program to help support the budget. Tuition collected is an estimated amount for those students who are placed in East Brunswick, either in our special education programs or for whom we find that they may have moved out of East Brunswick and we need to collect tuition until they've transferred out. And other addresses various items such as any orders that may have been placed in the prior year that are canceled and return funds into the budget. It would be interest earnings, facility use fees, and various income items such as that, the various miscellaneous items for $299,000. And that ultimately is what comprises our revenue. And of course, we need to have a balanced budget, and our estimated expenses are in line with our revenue. So now let's talk about state aid. This is just a quick snapshot. I like to remind the board and the public as to where we are with state aid. And essentially, we've been seeing a flat state aid for a number of years. A minor increase occurred in the 2014-15 year. We are remaining unchanged for next year at $17.8 million. You'll see that back in 2008, 2009, our state aid was in excess of $20 million. So we have a long way to go before we catch up to where we were. In terms of our comparatives, once again, another way to look at our state aid and what our net state aid change is. State aid remaining the same from the 2 years. I'm sorry, the headers on that should be fiscal 2015 and fiscal 2016. Charter school costs, slight increase in the amount we are required to budget for charter schools. The SDA assessment remains the same. That is the amount that the state requires us to budget for. I always say it's an assessment related to its bad investment practices, related to loans that they had or grants they had given us for construction projects. And our net state aid, ultimately we're seeing a final or a funding decrease of about $35,000 in net when we take all of those components together. Our debt service fund, which pays the mortgage, remains flat in terms of state aid. So in summary, for the expenditure side, we're looking at $143.2 million, as noted earlier. In terms of the tax levy impact, our tax levy for the general fund will be increasing approximately $3 million. The debt service fund, which pays for the mortgage, is also increasing this year approximately $700,000. The one thing I wish to note on that is debt service will change from year to year. This happens to be an anomaly the year. I believe in the next subsequent year, that amount will then come down again. So I just wanted to make sure that was noted. Overall, between the debt service and general fund levies, the overall increase is approximately 3.99%. Some of the budget highlights. Number one, as it should be, is to support instructional programs, and this is specifically for regular education and special education combined, and you'll see how that is being done in a few of the slides that follow up. The budget reflects curriculum improvements through acquisitions of textbooks and necessary materials in various curricular areas. A continuing investment in technology. If you'll recall, last year we had bumped up the amount of funds to help support our technology initiatives, and we're continuing that with current or with the proposed budget. And there is a provision for capital improvements within the budget as well. So the main component in terms of additions in the budget relate to staffing. The budget includes a teacher for the general ed preschool, as an additional section will be added, as well as an instructional assistant required for that section. There is a science teacher for the 8th grade at Churchill and a science teacher for the 9th grade at Churchill, 2 positions necessary as a result of the student enrollment. A health teacher in addition at Churchill, once again related to student enrollment. So the 3 positions I've just mentioned at Churchill are all related to student enrollment. Moving on, the LLD teacher, that is special education, learning language disabled students. We are adding a section at Hammersholt, and that will also require an instructional assistant to go with that program. At the elementary level, a behavior disabilities program is being added. A teacher and an instructional assistant will be required for that program. And at the high school, multiply disabled class section is being added there to support the student need, and that will require 1 teacher. In addition, a resource room teacher at Hammersholt is necessary, and at Churchill, due to students moving up in program from the middle school up to the junior high school, we are planning to introduce an autism class, which will require a teacher and an instructional assistant to support the student needs at that level. The last few items refer to a lunch aid at Irwin to deal with the number of students in the cafeteria and help manage the student population during the lunch period. a human resources coordinator related specifically to assist with the overwhelming demands that come from the federal and state governments on human resources. A head coach for the golfing program, that is a transitional position, moving from an assistant coach to a head coach position. Substitute clerical rate increase. If you'll recall, this last year, we had a rate increase for the substitute teachers. This next cycle will be for the clerical substitute staff. We have not made any changes in those rates in quite a number of years. So in order to remain competitive, this is necessary. And lastly, there will be an elimination of 3 part-time instructional assistants at the elementary level. These were added this year as a result of necessity due to the class sizes that had increased above what our standards are, and so instructional assistants were added in those classrooms. Those will be backed out since we will be addressing those class sizes vis-a-vis additional class sections. As I said, this was a summary at this point in time. We'll get into more details as we move forward. The budget will be posted on the district website. The Board of Education has budget binders, and I've provided you with some updates for those binders as well. The information will also be available in the Office of the School Business Administrator, and the same information that we work from will be sent out to the East Brunswick Public Library within the next 2 days so that it is available for the public as well.
Mr. Simmons.
Mr. Juliana, you mentioned in the beginning forecasting for teachers. What happens if in July or August we realize we need 2 more classrooms because of enrollment we didn't expect? What do we do? How do we get that through the budget? What's the impact?
Well, I would say that, let's say, for example, if 2 teachers came up that were necessary, and we've had that happen in the past, we will have additional retirements, I would expect, between the time the budget is finalized and July or even September. There are folks that just aren't ready to make that decision yet. Currently, the budget reflects all the retirements for which we have been provided notice. So there's breakage in there. We've reduced salaries to be able to reflect the reduction in salaries as a result of the more seasoned staff retiring and having newer staff on hand. That will help to offset, if that continues on beyond the budget, that will help to offset the costs associated with additional staff should that arise after a final budget is adopted. And of course, we'll have to look at other avenues as well, if that's necessary. We have never been, to my recollection, in such a dire position where we've had to then turn back and make substantive cuts elsewhere with plans that we had intended to put into place. So I'm pretty confident at this level that we'll be able to sustain, a couple of positions. Mrs. Becker.
Thank you, Bernie. Could you go back to that point about the debt service tax increase?
Yes.
Rising, and it was an anomaly this year?
Yes.
And you said you believe that next year it'll go down. Outside of a crystal ball, seriously, what are you attributing the rise, and then your feeling that it's going to go down again next year too?
It is really, it's not so much a feeling, it is more based in fact.
I know.
Because for the debt service payments, that's based on a fixed schedule. Okay. So it is not a result of incurring additional debt. There's a payment schedule set for each of the loans that we have, each of the mortgages that we have. And so while it's called level debt, this kind of an anomaly shows you that it's not really very level. It's a terminology in the debt service industry, if you will. So what happens is that principal and interest payments will fluctuate based on what the payout schedule is. And I'm anticipating, based on the schedules, and I think this will happen in the 2016-17 year, that the interest payment will drop, the principal and interest payment will drop and require a lesser tax levy at that point in time.
So it's the rate of interest.
It's the manner in which the schedule of payments was laid out.
Okay. All right. I'm not sure why scheduled payments would be that different from year to year, but it's a relatively minor.
It does happen. It does
Okay.
happen. And some of it, I'm going to just take a chance here in speculating that a piece of that is most likely related to some of the refinancing that we had done.
Okay.
Where
That makes
we are
sense.
going to be paying off one of our loans,
Right.
and the refinancing will kick in, so there may be an overlap there
That's true.
between the two.
Thank you.
Dr. Cohen.
Quick points I just wanted to add. We haven't heard an answer yet on charter school.
We have not received any answer on charter school, formal answer. What the state did in the budget documents that they provided us, the state aid information, they did reflect in the charter school data that there is an enrollment of 25 students being projected for 6th grade at the Hatikva Charter School. So while we haven't received formal notice vis-a-vis a letter or some notice from the state of New Jersey, Department of Education, it is reflected within the documents that they had us download.
So if the number isn't dramatically different than the year before, have they reduced then the number of the class sizes for the other classes?
What they've done is align the K-5 classes to be closer to what reality is in terms of the number of students that East Brunswick is sending to the charter school. What had happened in the past was that the Department of Education was essentially forcing us to budget for the entirety of the estimated enrollments without regard to what was actually the enrollment coming from East Brunswick. They've made the adjustment now in order to keep the overall budget, I'm speculating, to keep the overall budget flat while also allowing the 6th grade approval.
Dr. Cohen, if I could, this was an issue that we raised with the Assistant Commissioner of Education at a meeting that Mr. Giuliana and Dr. Ogden and I attended, where we were concerned, number one, about the approval of the Hatikva amendment to the charter, but also the funding, the way the funding's calculated. And we are hopeful this is in response to our concerns about becoming more accurate in their projections of the funding that we need to allocate.
Well, it's only taken 5 or 6 years to get realistic numbers. Can we expect much more than that?
We'll take it for now.
It's unbelievable.
So then you wouldn't really expect that number to dramatically change going forward?
At this point, based on what lack of communication is coming out of the Department of Education and only on the documents, I'd say that that's a pretty good number that we can rely on.
But if you're right, shouldn't it smooth out somewhat over the course of the next few years?
Unless they add another grade.
It's unknown because we don't know what the scope is of what may have been approved. So if the middle school grades have been approved, then next year will be 7th grade, the following year 8th grade, and we don't know what those numbers may end up being for us. So we may see that charter school allotment increase in the subsequent years. I think that's going to be dependent upon what the actual 6th grade enrollment is for this next year.
Correct.
Because if they're looking at the typical rollover where the students in one grade will advance to the next, I think it will have to be tied to what the actual enrollment is in 6th grade when we do the enrollment counts next October. So if the enrollment at 5th grade, or rather 6th grade, is 25, then that 25 will move forward into the 7th grade, and what will go into 6th will be what their enrollment is at 5th, and so on.
Maybe the decrease in the amount is because the 6th grade folks know what kind of building we have in Hammersholt, I would
Well-
think, and participate in that.
Actually, I hope the parents look at this meeting and video later on and see the academic performance and the achievements of our students and realize what a strong academic and artistic and athletic program we offer here at East Brunswick. And I hope as consumers, they self-select to, if they are already somewhere else, to return to East Brunswick. And we would welcome them back.
Well put.
Just one more question.
Just one more on a thought. The STA assessment that you said was
Yes.
related to poor investments on the part of the state. That's not just investments in East Brunswick, that was statewide.
No, that was statewide.
Okay,
So-
because when you said it, it sounded as if it was.
So to clarify, that was not a result of anything that the East Brunswick Public School District did. At the time that the original School Development Authority had some $5 billion in funds available for school improvements, they did not manage it well. And as a result of the losses that it sustained, the bad expenditures that it incurred.
Those are being assessed to all school districts.
It's being assessed to all school
Correct.
districts based on the amount of grant funds that the schools had received.
I just wanted to clarify that.
So they're spreading the loss.
Mr. Philipchak.
Bernie, just to go over the public, the charter school is an outlay for us, correct?
Yes, it is.
Now, we don't see anything where they spent it on. In other words, each department presents their budget to us, but when it comes to the charter school, it's just an outlay. We really don't, we could go online and see their financial statements, but they don't have our approval of what they spend our money on, correct?
That's correct. Charter schools don't have a reporting responsibility to the public school from which they draw. The only responsibility that exists is in terms of the enrollment, to ensure that the only funds that are transferred are those associated with the actual students that are enrolled there. Any additional information that anyone in the public would want, they would have to pursue it through the same methodology that they would with us. They'd have to contact the charter school, perhaps go to its website, contact the Department of Education. The charter school must prepare a budget. The charter school is subject to audit annually. So they're subject to some of the same requirements as the school district is, but not nearly all of them.
But the efficiency and the effectiveness of their spending, we would not know.
No, you would not know that. We would not know that without having to pursue it on our own.
Thank you.
You're welcome.